What is up, crew? Welcome to another episode of Seek the Edge podcast, where our mission is to challenge you outside of your comfort zone, which we will be challenged today, mentally and physically, to be able to see and understand the God-given potential inside. And that comes with resistance sometimes that we'll talk about. That comes with having the courage to acknowledge the nudge and be willing to be in pursuit when it's uncomfortable, but also when it's incredibly fulfilling on the other side. And today I have Michael Flinner, which I'm so excited about. He is the host of the Dare to Daydream podcast, which I was on, the founder of The Fluff, and is deep in the process of writing and releasing his very first book called The Island, and exited also a company, and has had an incredible life story that is one of courage, but is also one of not staying comfortable when it's easier to stay comfortable. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kels.
I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Thanks for having me. I was thinking about it yesterday. Like, you were one of the OG guests of my pod, and I'm trying to think, you were like the third or fourth guest, maybe something like that.
Oh, was it really?
Top five, maybe. I have to go back and look. Yeah.
Hey, top five. There we go. Well, it was funny because we both work out at the same gym, the Armory. Shout out to them. And I remember you coming up to me one day and just being like, hey, this is crazy idea. Would you want to be on the podcast? And I'm like, stop there, 100%. Like, I don't care what it is. I could just tell your genuine heart and your heart to want to serve and lead others. And as I've been getting to know you better, it's like you're like my soul friend, where we're walking parallel journeys. And I appreciate you tremendously.
Yeah, well, thanks for those kind words. And I remember that day. And I've been kind of following your story just from the Armory, right? Is kind of bouncing in and out of social media with aligned stories. And I remember seeing your Mission 48 part of your of what you've done. And I was like, I got to get her on here. And so, I think the rest is history. We had that conversation and here we are.
Now here we are.
Yeah.
And I want to dig into first your podcast, Dare to Daydream. Because it's a very unique name, but it has such a deep message with it. So what does Dare to Daydream mean to you?
Good question. I think I chose... Did you ever create something and then you kind of black out and you go back? You're like, how did I get here? And it could be a God thing, or it just gets placed, in your heart. But for me, it was the fact of, I feel like when we're kids and we dream a lot, right? And we have this like whimsy about us in our daily lives and living more consciously. And as we get older, we're kind of structured, right, through school and rightly so, some of that stuff for maturity we have to. But I think a lot of times as we grow and mature, we forget the dreaming part of life. And and I know you and I have talked about things like this over the years. And for me, it's when I hear a story and it could be an entrepreneur, it could be a nonprofit leader, it could just be someone who is just chasing a dream that could have nothing to do with career. But having the willingness to be vulnerable, take a risk, and say, this is not the path I'm on now. And not saying you have to risk it all and go down a different path, but it's listening to the whisper, listening to the dream. We talk about whispers a lot on the podcast. And following that whisper, what is it? Get quiet with it. Truly, lean into, what's there, and take the risk and just go. And again, from an entrepreneur standpoint or like a nonprofit, those are the most common stories because it's something you feel heavy on your heart in a positive way. Like, I have to go. It won't leave me alone, right? And I know a lot of people, and some guests I've had on the podcast were like, well, I've had this idea, and then I was like, nah. And then it came back again and again and again. Finally, it's like, it won't leave me alone. I have to go figure out what this is.
So you talk about the whisper, and where you're talking about writing a book right now. And the audience knows and the crew knows that I've previously been in the process of writing a book. And that first chapter is called The Nudge, because that has been a common theme of my life. And whether it be fitness pursuit, business pursuit, Mission 48, it started with that whisper until that whisper wouldn't leave me alone. And I think many people come to a point in their life where they're at a crossroads. I either acknowledge the whisper and have the courageous step to pursue that whisper, or I keep pushing it down and disqualifying myself because I'm not ready yet. That's just crazy. What am I doing? And I'm not saying every single moment when you have that whisper, take action right now. But what has been certain moments in your life where you felt that whisper? And what was that first response, thought-wise or in your brain with that whisper?
Mm. I think two things come to mind is disservice to both yourself and to those that you could serve others,
Yeah.
right? And so it could be starting the podcast, right? And a lot of people talk about. Had my mom ask me, like, "So are you making money off this?" I'm like, "No, mom." Like, but it's to serve the audience, right? And so there's been the first handful of guests were easy because I was like, "That isn't like you. Like that's an amazing story." And whatever audience is out there, I want to share, right? So it would be a disservice for me, I feel like, to hear your story, to hear, somebody else's story that's extremely inspirational and go, more people need to know what you've been through, what your story is, what your experiences are. And, so for me to kind of hoard it, it feels selfish. And so I feel like it's a disservice to the public, to the audience, to whoever else it could reach. So those are some of the things I think as far as like the mission goes. But yeah, I think it could be starting a company, to being a better parent, to being a better friend, leaning in with intentional purpose of, you hear that whisper of like, well, man, I should reach out to my friend. I know he's going through some tough times. Yeah, but I'm busy. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it, and it shouldn't be, you know, a hurdle to like reach out and just even if it's a text message, right?
Yeah.
So something small like that, all the way up to like starting a company or leaning into a nonprofit or, but I think we do have these nudges and whispers, and it's our choice. Do we hold on to them and be maybe a tad bit selfish with it, or in a disservice to ourselves to fulfill what that might be, but to those who we might be serving as well.
That's interesting. Your perspective, from what I'm hearing, is it's selfish for me to hold on to those whispers. And it's interesting from a faith aspect in my walk in faith right now, is I'm learning a lot about obedience and being obedient to the nudges, or from a faith lens, like the Holy Spirit, when he's telling me, hey, go pray for that person, or hey, go shoot this person a text. And what I've been learning about it is if God can't trust you in the small, he's not going to trust you in the big. And I know in my life, I've wanted the big, the big break in business or this or that. And it's like, we look for these mountaintop moments, but I also have to look in the mirror to say, hey, if I'm not obedient in the small nudges or whispers or things that he's telling me to do, whatever your belief system is, then I can't expect myself to be having these mountaintop moments, or God give me these mountaintop moments with that. And that has been a hard reflection sometimes, because it comes with some resistance of, well, what will they think about me if I go and just from a faith, like pray for them? Or what will they think about me, fitness, if I change the way I'm living and I don't go out on the weekends, but I go to the gym? What will they think about me if I start this business and it fails or it doesn't go to the trajectory? And it's all these ridiculous, irrational fears that it's just stories I'm telling myself, that at the end of the day, it held a lot of individuals back from obeying that nudge or being obedient to what he's calling you into. So what fears did you have to battle?
I think first and foremost, and this is a very popular topic these days, I don't think it was just named as much as it is today, is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And it's, who am I, right? Who am I to start a company? Who am I to write a book? Who am I to go out and look for new friendships, new relationships, and so I think, you talk about, getting trusted with the small. And I think that leads into also a lot of people, and I know when I say a lot of people, I'm pointing myself first, is we have these ideas of big picture of what we want, but it's the little steps that it takes to get there. And that's where the doubt creeps in. That's where imposter syndrome creeps in, right? All these things. And I know it's called, some people call it the messy middle, right? It's like you start, tons of momentum. You might have a cheerleader or 10 in your corner, and you see the next peak in the mountain you want to get to, but it's between there, and that's that messy middle, and it's hard to. A lot of it's lonely and isolating, and so tribe and community is obviously a huge component to get there, but it's you're right. It's you are the one that's being trusted with those little steps along the way. Nobody wants to wake up when it's rainy and it's 5 a.m. and go train, or go do whatever your company needs, or go do what your kids might need or a friend might need. And so I think it's just those small little steps along the way that it's easy to get lost and quit.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer, and I'm learning it more and more every day. And I get I get humbled and taught lessons. And if you don't quit, it's really got no choice. Not that it's going to work out the way you wanted it to, but it's going to work out usually even better. Life's happening for you, not to you. So what cool lesson am I going to learn if it's not the path I thought it was going to be? But if I don't quit, I'm going to find out. If I quit, I'm never going to know.
Yeah. Persistence.
Mm-hmm.
I just interviewed he's a great human. Andy is a Navy SEAL. And that was his top 1 of 2 lessons that he learned from his time being a SEAL was just don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be easy to say. It can be harder to put in action in those messy middle. You wake up and the doubt or the question comes in because it's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
I think social media can paint a really pretty picture of entrepreneurship or fitness or writing a book of, okay, start this thing, boom, it's here.
Mm-hmm.
And that messy middle, it isn't necessarily not talked about, but there's going to be those lonely days, those hard days that the question, the doubt comes in. And that persistence muscle, if it's not strengthened, man, is it so enticing too. So what's given you, I don't want to say the ability to not quit, but in those moments, whether it be writing the book or transitioning something in your personal life that like feels really hard, what has given you the courage to not quit, or what do you tap into in those moments?
It's a good question, Kelsey. And I think, first and foremost is just getting quiet, maybe with a prayer and just saying, I have no idea how to do this. Lead me, teach me. And what I've learned with that is usually it's the whole pie we're looking at. So in that day, in that moment, like erase that from my memory. I don't have to have this whole thing figured out. What's one small thing I can do to move the needle? And there's, the 2% rule, right? If I can just get 2% better today, just do a little bit, right? I had Amy McNee on my podcast, and she's a fantastic author based out of the UK and an amazing follow and burst of inspiration and energy. And, Amy has written, a handful of books, and Amy in her book, she writes 300 words a day. Blew my mind when she told me that, right? Because you think all the success and then just sit down and it's just mad chaos and creativity and type. And she's like, no, like little bite-sized pieces every day. And you look back after a month and that's several thousand words, 6 months, a year. And so I think that's what I learned is from her, and just from that mentality is like, and it's hard at times because you don't see a huge needle mover with a bite-sized piece, right? So if you can do that over and over again and know 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be so proud of what I accomplished. If I just stick with it for 2 weeks, a month from now, I'm going to be so, but it's those little bite-sized pieces consistently over and over every day. And then once you have some data, I feel like you can kind of rewire the brain and go, and maybe start writing it down, as you go and say, I haven't done anything. But if you look at the data, right, facts over fear, oh, well, I actually did do a ton in this past month. It's right there. But our brains are so wired from years and years and years and years of survival that, I think we just kind of go along with what's next and easiest versus like, no, you did a ton. I still sometimes need reminded. And if I don't write it down or have some way of proving it to myself, it's a wild place to be in your head. But,
wild, wild west.
it's a crazy, it's a circus sometimes. So I need data, right? I need to look back and go, no, like this is what you did, and keep doing the small bite-sized pieces. They do add up.
I was listening to a podcast a couple months ago. People that are listening to this, like, you say that every time, Kels, every podcast say, I was listening to a podcast. But it was this very wise older gentleman. And he said, some days it's just about not messing anything up more. It's not about accomplishing the thing or moving the needle 500 degrees. It's like, did I just not mess anything up today?
Yeah.
And that can be so true. I've tapped into that sometimes where I'm like, man, it just feels like, not that nothing is going right, but in your brain, that can be the thought pattern of, man, this is just a scratch, but just don't mess anything up. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't need to have big needle movers. It's just okay to flow.
Yeah.
that reminds me, my therapist told me one time, and I literally just thought about this yesterday, is she said, we are so focused on growing and self-development and what's next. Most times we need to unlearn what's no longer serving us. Right? When I heard that, I was like, and I'll go back to her sometimes and say, remember when you said, and then I say, I learned that this week and this is what, but it's, and it has nothing to do with, well, it does have a lot to do with how we were raised and, childhood, but it can be, parents taught you something and it served its purpose at the time or, right. But things change and or you just picked up on something, subconsciously over the years, not even necessarily childhood, but it's like till you get that conscious awareness and go, oh, wait, that thought is not serving me or it's not true. So it's like unlearning versus like constantly growing and evolving. And, sometimes you need to pause and just go, wait a second, what can unlearning maybe is even harder, right? Because it's wired in there for potentially years.
We're going to dig into this.
Okay.
Because it's interesting that you're on the podcast today. I have one day where I do all of my client calls. And there was a theme yesterday, the call was yesterday, where it was beliefs that individuals had, that this is fitness that we're talking about, but fitness outwardly is portrayed inwardly about the beliefs that you have about yourself, about fitness, about your worth, all the things. Like it goes hand in hand together. People just don't realize it. And the theme that kept coming up was the false beliefs that right now is ingrained in them. And it's not, I think a lot of social media is, well, this happened to you and this happened. And it can feel very victim mindset of, well, this happened in your childhood. And so that's why you have that. And it's very blame focused or kind of forward, blame forward. And it's not necessarily your fault, but it's your responsibility. And in my opinion, it doesn't serve you to have that victim mentality of, well, this happened to me, so that's the reason why these things happen. Sure. That doesn't serve you, but it can give you an explanation for why you operate the way that you do and why you sabotage some things or why you take action or don't take action. And so for you specifically in that unlearning, what are some things or two pieces that you've had to unlearn?
And I think this goes with everything we try to do new is I'm not qualified. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. And then that can lead down a rabbit hole of comparison, right? So probably that of like, I'm not qualified and maybe comparison. And I was listening to something the other day, like you, it was a podcast probably, but the old saying, comparison is the thief of joy, right? And he's like the true word that captures the entire thought process is thief, right? Like what's a thief do? Like you're stealing from yourself and from your future and from your potential. And so when I like really wrap my head around that, I'm unlearning and I think it's just hardwired for most of us is so much comparison. And you nailed it a little bit ago when you talked about social media, and social media will do that. And so I think just the comparison and are we truly qualified to take these? We go back to dreaming. Are we truly qualified to go chase that dream or whatever the path we might be like leaning towards? And I think a lot of people, and I'm still guilty of it myself with some things, is we just choose not to. Like, nah, who am I? That's crazy. Who am I? We put our head down and go a different direction. And again, back to now you're robbing yourself and others from a potential huge gift that could be brought out of it, just trying and moving forward.
Which gives the whole ethos of seeking the edge.
Yeah.
You have to have the courage to answer the call. And I know there's one person out there that's listening to this that, oh, I do have this whisper, I do have this nudge, and I'm at the crossroads where I hear you, Michael. It's stealing not only from myself, but anybody else that could be blessed by my pursuit of this. But man, it feels hard, and I feel scared, and I'm nervous. What would you tell them?
I'm not the first to say this. This is rinse, repeat, but do it scared. And that's the hardest thing. But I think much like anything in life is if you do it once, right? And maybe do, if again, it's that whole piece of the pie theory, right? Is if you cut a little piece of it, that's a little less scary, right? So maybe not take the entire leap, or maybe that first step, split it in half, right? So look at, okay, what do I have to do? And just take small, again, I kind of go back to just small steps, but you got to just dive in and do it. And just, it's almost like jumping out of a plane, right?
Which I have before.
Right.
It's scary.
Right. So once you take that, but then when you hit the ground, the parachute, it did its
Yeah.
thing. You're like, that was the most, blissful and enjoying, a couple minutes of my life. And so that's what I think we have to, and once we, again, like everything else, it's like learning to walk. It's like once we go down that path and overcome that fear, but you got to just take that first step and do it scared and know it's not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be how you want it to be in the end, but you have to, any fitness thing you've done, starting this podcast, right? It's like you get better as you go along. And I think we need to give ourselves grace of, I'm going to do this. I don't know what it looks like, but I know that in a couple of weeks and in 6 months and a year from now, it's going to look really cool.
Yeah. And this is coming from somebody that has a very impressive track record. I mean, you've built and exited a company. You're in the process of writing your first book. Isn't your manuscript done?
Yes.
That's all done. You started another company. You have an amazing family and kids. This isn't coming from somebody that hasn't done some great things in life, which to hear you still save the things of do it scared and, hey, I still have doubts and there's still questions in my brain, that even gives more legitimacy of no matter what level you get to, the new level, there's still some more glass ceilings that we need to punch through or doubts that we need to overcome. And so I just first want to say thank you for your openness and ability to look inward of, well, why am I responding this way? Or, yeah, I am writing this book and these fears are coming up, because that takes a lot of courage to face that versus just pretend like it's not there,
Yeah, I remember like a month ago I was in Nashville and at a brand builders event and the speaker he and I became pretty good friends and he crushed it. And I said, Ed, like, that was awesome. Like, can you give me what were you thinking, backstage? How'd you prepare? I just love to pick people's brains on things like this. And this is a guy who's, established career and he went out on stage and crushed. And he said, and this is, as you know, the event, the judges give instant feedback. And he said, I plugged my ears while they were giving feedback to the previous speaker. And I was like, why? He's like, because I didn't want it to kind of mess with my focus. And I just figured this guy could just watch and go on. And he even had this hesitation of and then he was doing breath work. And so someone who I look at on the speaker level is on a different level, still does these exercises to just maintain, focus and awareness. And I think it's just different for everybody. Right. And, I've started a few companies. The fear is never not there. It's just you get used to dancing with it a little bit more, and knowing that. And I think a lot of it too is could go on a different path with this. But for me, meditation. If you go and bring in that conscious awareness and you entertain the feeling, but don't let it stay, and that's okay, right? I learned that meditation is let fear come in and acknowledge it. And it's like. I listened to a meditation one time and it was like, imagine you're at the bank of a river and the leaves going down the river, all these feelings that you're looking at and you're feeling, right? So there's fear, there's doubt, there's jealousy, and you're allowed to look at it and feel it, but you have to keep going, right? I'm going to sit back from an aerial view and look at it the best of my, and let it be there and sit there and feel it, right? But then release it and don't let it. And I think no matter how many times we go down the path of starting something new, it's going to be there.
Why do you think it's important to allow yourself to feel the emotion, but then let it flow by versus it's not there, or I'm just going to keep muscling my way through?
That's a great question. I think if you stuff it, it's just going to build and build and build and build. And I was a professional stuffer back in the day. Yeah.
Got two professional stuffers. We're great at it.
For sure. And I think that's totally what it is. Right. And so, and the nervous system can only handle that so long, and eventually it's going to break. And I think you have to, the saying, you have to feel it to heal it. Right. And so you have to take those things into account and say, oh, I'm not scared. No, I actually am. And sometimes verbalize it. Call that friend, I know that I have a few people in my circle. I could call you and be like, I don't know, Kelsey, I'm thinking about starting something new. I know, everything we just talked about, but I need to hear somebody else say it back, or I need to verbalize it. I have this crazy thing I do where sometimes I'm in my car and I probably should be reaching out to a friend at moments like this, but I'll say things to myself as if like a friend were there
Yes,
saying it
I
to
do
me.
the same thing.
Do you?
Yep.
And I think I don't know, maybe I picked it up from somewhere, but I think it's so, it's therapeutic, but it works, is like start spitting facts to myself that like you or like, a trusted friend would say to me, and it works. 30 seconds later or 2 minutes later, I do feel better about it.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you do that, because I look like a crazy person sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think it's incredibly important to build your voice that you talk back to yourself with, and not, I know I didn't even think about it. I just let this crazy voice in my head rule the show.
Yep.
And I didn't understand the power and ability for me to talk back to myself in a good way. Like, no, you got this. Like, no, those thoughts, they don't have power over you anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm going to circle back real quick. I love what you brought up about pulling those emotions out versus just stuffing them down, because what is brought to light, it has less power over it. And I think many individuals don't take action or sabotage just because they're afraid to feel the specific emotion that they don't want to feel. Fear, vulnerability, ooh, I'm not qualified to do this thing. And going back to what you said a few minutes ago about proof, you now have proof that fear doesn't have hold on you. You did the thing scared, and guess what? You survived. You did the thing scary, and guess what? Not everything just blew up. And if it did blow up, hey, you learned a lesson with it.
Yeah.
And I know I have, but many people stop themselves like 1 inch short because they're just too afraid to feel the feeling, because what if X, Y, and Z happens, versus, no, I'm going to build some proof of myself right now. And I was at a conference in February, and there's a speaker. You would love this, I think. There's a speaker there, and she talked about a proof journal. And I have not been able to get into journaling fully. I tried to. It's just, it not yet is something that I've been able to incorporate in my daily life. But she, at the end of the night, asked herself, what is proof that the vision or dream that I have is coming to life? And it could be the smallest thing, like for you writing a book. You know what? I wrote 300 words, whatever that word for you is. But it's proof that, hey, this fear, it doesn't have that much grip on me anymore. And just because it's not there yet, the book isn't completely done yet, the dream isn't accomplished yet, there's these baby steps that I can fall back on in those moments of doubt, fear, hesitation, and it gives those emotions less weight. And I love that concept, but I also love what you brought in of not fearing those emotions and so pushing them down, but allowing them to come up, but not having as much hold on you.
This is funny because you're talking, Kelsey. So just this morning, and this is, I believe, all by not by accident. So, so this morning, I were talking in the parking lot. I opted, instead of working out, to do hydrotherapy at the gym, right? And so it's cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. And I always say that cold plunge always teaches you something. Sometimes it's a repetitive lesson you just haven't learned, but I feel like it always teaches you something. But for the first time, and I don't do the hot, cold or I don't have a history of it as much as I do just going into cold plunge. So this morning I go in and, hit that cold water, you're in your breath. Then I go and hit the hot, right? And the hot's longer, right? It's 3 minutes cold, 10 minutes hot. And so you're comfy, right? It gets hot, right? There's the whole physical aspect of it. My point is I get back into the cold, and for the first time I sat there and I started to like learn this lesson. I was like, you got to go back to your breath, and it's uncomfortable. And the lesson I took was the walls, there's still 4 walls in this room. There's a roof over the head, over my head. There's a door right there. There's no saber-toothed tiger, right? Yeah. So that was the same environment when I was in the warm and comfortable, but I get in the cold, guess what changed? Nothing. So the lesson for me was like, you went from comfortable to extremely uncomfortable like that. And I love that exercise because it's, I think, a metaphor for life is like, you're going to get thrown into stuff, and sometimes fast, but it's temperature and thermometer, right? It's like the temperature can change, but what's your internal thermometer? Like if you can keep that, gauged at 70 degrees at all times, which is hard to do as humans. Yeah. But it was just a cool like life lesson. I was sitting there thinking, I was like, Michael, nothing has changed. Right, you got thrown into a different environment. Breathe, adapt. It's a little bit fearful, a little bit, and then guess what? You're going to do it to yourself again here in a little bit. So I don't know. It just kind of reminded me, of like that. It's how you adapt in and out of the comfort, non-comfort.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. And I like also the lesson of you sought it out, you didn't shy away from it. Like, yeah, there's probably that animalistic brain of you of like, oh, I don't want to go in. Oh, let me avoid the cold.
Sure.
But you had to be like, no, I'm going in this cold. My breath's going to get quick. My heart's going to be like, oh, I want to get out. But instead of allowing that to rule you, you're like, no, I'm going to control my system in this incredibly uncomfortable environment. And how much is that a lesson to life, that curveballs that happen, life that happens that people aren't expecting? I love that.
Yeah, it just moves the needle a little bit.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, it's one of my favorite quotes. What is it? The magic you're looking for is on the other side of the work you're avoiding, right? And I come back to that over and over again. And it's like, you're not going to grow just staying comfortable. And it's so easy. And again, we're wired to be safe, and, you know, there's saber-toothed tigers out there, and, you know, and so we have to remind ourselves that it's usually not as scary. How often, I mean, I'd ask you this, how often have you looked at a task or started something and you procrastinate because it seems hard, but then you go do it, again, taking that bite-sized piece, and you're like, that took a fraction of the time I thought it was going to. It was easier than I thought. I mean, does that happen to you a lot?
Oh my, it is a constant reflection of, Kels, yes, you're working on the things. Is this actually what's moving your needle forward, or is this what's comfortable to check off the list? 99.9% of it is comfortable. I can feel productive, but it's not effective. And that is such an easy lie and trap to fall into if you're not incredibly self-aware about what your brain is trying to do.
Yeah.
And I know in my personal life, there have been a few, but one really big decision that scared the daylights out of me. There was so much unknown on the other side. There was so much comfort in staying where I was, but also, if I was really honest with myself, it wasn't true to not only me, it wasn't the path that was forward for me. And I avoided it like the plague. Oh, I avoided it like the plague. I was like, oh, is this the right decision? Is this the wrong decision? And I went back and forth for months about it. And I think the people that I had around me were incredibly important in that timeline to lean on in that hard decision. But once again, it was the stories that I built up in my brain.
Yeah.
Oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if it's the wrong decision?
Yeah.
What if this person receives it? Just all these crazy stories, which for me promoted a lot of inaction. And I was just stagnant. And I was like, oh, wrestling back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's funny you brought this up. I was just on a call with a friend yesterday. And I was telling him that one of my biggest weaknesses is my ability to avoid. Oh, I can avoid things like the plague. I can avoid hard conversations like the plague. I can avoid tasks that are just really uncomfortable for me like the plague. And he responded back. He's like, Kels, you? Like, because he just didn't think that I did that. I'm like, no, I'm a professional avoider. But I think it also comes from the reflection of knowing that that is the pattern that you more likely fall into, to be aware of not allowing that to rule the way that you actually take action in the future. So, oh yeah, for sure. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's the same mentality. I constantly overestimate what things are going to be like. And again, you're living in a false future.
Yeah.
And, you know, one thing I've learned I'm trying to get better at is, and especially I'm kind of a math guy, right? So I'm approaching like a business situation in my head, and I used to like whiteboard this, right, in meetings, and I would say out loud, okay, guys, worst case scenario, ... Why do we do that, right? Why don't we start looking at, okay, guys, best case scenario, right? And be a little vulnerable, like, why? And I think, again, back to how we're wired, like, well, instead of thinking it's not going to work out, why don't we just be wildly optimistic and this, you know, a little bit of a whimsical approach to it and go, this could be better than I even ever thought. And I'm still trying. That's one of the hardest lessons I'm still learning, is because I think a lot of times, you know, God shows me that. It was like, actually, like, bam, this is a drop of something that you didn't even see coming, and it was amazing. I'm like, that came out of left field. I didn't even know, right? And it's so, you get so focused on like, well, I'm going to avoid this because we're, you know, this could happen, versus like refocusing on like, what if it's better than I ever dreamed? What if there's something out there that I'm going to go down this path? And again, it's going to, I went right, but I should have went left. So I'm, you know, but right is going to take me to maybe a couple failures in the way, but then it's going to open up in this big blissful place of, you know, awesomeness that I never saw coming.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that you brought this in. I can't remember who said it, so I want to give them credit, but I can't remember right now. But they said the quality of your life is the quality of questions that you ask yourself. Is you can ask yourself the question is, what if this goes wrong?
Yep.
And what's your response, or what's life going to show you? Man, all the ways that it could go wrong. Or you can ask yourself, well, what if this works out? What if this goes right? And it's not an ignorance of, well, the worst case scenario can never happen, but it's also giving your brain, your subconscious life to be able to work out. And like, what if this thing could go better than I could ever imagine? And my question for you in that is, I was talking with someone yesterday, a client yesterday, and we were wrestling through this because it was a belief system that she had. And she held herself back from taking a lot of action steps or things that she wanted to pursue because she was so afraid that if it didn't work out, she didn't know if she could handle it. And so what has enabled you to have the trust or ability to endure the challenges if it didn't work out? Like, what allows you to take that step, but also not freak out if this thing doesn't go in this trajectory, that I take action towards that? Does that make sense? That question makes sense?
Yeah, I think so. I find where we're going with it. And it's maybe a morbid way of looking at it, but sometimes I'm like, stop overthinking it. You're not going to die.
Yeah, that's
right.
Good. That's good.
Do that Michael Easter thing, right? Like, do something hard, but but don't die.
Yeah.
And,
Comfort crisis.
Comfort
Best
crisis.
book ever.
Yeah. And so sometimes I get in my own head, and you go down the rabbit hole again of like worst case scenario. Like, so I'm just really trying to again rewire the energy of, well, you're not going to die, and that's worst case scenario, right? Over. And then I look at like I just really try to zoom out big picture and go, this is so small on the spectrum of everything else in your life. And not to be, hokey, a little bit corny, but it's back to gratitude too, right? Like if you can really focus in on like what you do have in that moment and what's going right, this seems like such a small blip on the radar that it's like, is it really that risky? Because everything else is so evolved. And one thing I heard that I've been doing this a lot lately with like my kids is like, what you hoped and wished for so much like 2 years ago is here now, right? Like maybe the next step for your child to get through something or get their driver's license, or something would be, if this could just happen, life would be easier, right? But we just move on to the next fearful thing or thing that's inconvenient, or like, versus like taking a step back with gratitude and going, well, is this that big of a deal? Look where this other part of my life was, just 6 months ago, 2 years ago, whatever it might be. And kind of and I think once gratitude comes in, then it just opens up a whole new way of thinking and allowing ourselves to move forward with messing up whatever that worry is, and again, a lot of times the mess up's not a mess up. It's creating a path and clarity and a vision for something better.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, it's the control. Like we as humans try to control so much, and well, this is the outcome that I want. I did that with Mission 48. Like this is the outcome. And it challenged me in a lot of different areas where, Kelsey, you ain't in control. Like you think you're in control. And yes, I try to plan and be strategic, and I'm not just on a whim, throwing things at the wall from a business perspective, but I'm not in control. And that has allowed me to trust a lot more. For me, it's a faith aspect of, all right, even if this doesn't work out, God's teaching me something.
Yep.
I'm learning something that's going to help me in the future, or it's a redirection. And I think when we can release that control of what we need to have happen or what we think should happen and say, I'm going to work my butt off. I am going to take the step. I'm going to put in the work. But at the end of the day, whatever direction it's supposed to be taken, I'm either going to learn something or I'm going to succeed in whatever trajectory that is. And releasing that control, man, is that a battle that I have every single day, but has been incredibly helpful for me to take that leap and be like, at the end of the day, God's got me regardless of what that is. And it's not me doing less or just being like, oh yeah, God's got me, I'm just going to chill out here. But it's given me the courage to seek the edge in a lot of different ways of life. Right.
Yeah, we can't control the outcome. That's the crazy part about building and creating and like chasing a dream is it's in us. But at the end of the day, we have zero control of the outcome.
Oh gosh.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I feel like if something is hard for a long period of time and it's over and over and over again, not necessarily hard as in a challenge as far as like, waking up and working on something, but you just eventually are exhausted. Then I look at myself and go, why? Oh, I know why. I was trying to force it again, right? And so when I detach from the outcome, then a lot of times, and most times it doesn't take long at all, where I see it and go, oh my gosh, the success is right here. It was just a different path I didn't see because I was forcing so hard with my tunnel vision, being a human, and not removing myself from the bigger picture and saying like, detach, surrender it. And when I do that, like I can look over and it's just a different path that I didn't see. And so I think a lot of times that is just trying so hard to, control the outcome. I always come back to like the baseball analogy, right? Like some of the all-time greats like Ted Williams and Tony Gwynn. And it's like, those guys were the greatest hitters of all time, but they were lucky to get a hit 3 or 4 times out of 10, right? Like 30 to 40 out of 100. When you start expanding the numbers, you're like, it looks like a failure, right? And those are the greatest. So I think when you look at it like that, is like there's so much room for error and just detaching from the outcome because we can't control it.
Man, and I'm going to switch directions after this point because I think this is so good. And I'm going to relate this to the fitness world because that's the world that I live in a lot. As you talk about being goal focused or goal oriented versus process focused and process oriented. And I always say that, yes, we need to have a goal. If we don't have a goal, then we'd have no idea where we're getting and we're not going to get there. It's like a GPS. If I don't know that I'm going to my hometown, Canton, Ohio, and I just start driving, I'm going to end up in Florida and being like, well, why isn't this Canton? Because you didn't have an end goal. You didn't have an end focus with it. But in fitness, I see this a lot, whether it be body composition, a strength goal, is they're so focused on wanting and needing this body composition that it distracts them from the process that's going to get them there. And so it's like, you're not going to get that body comp tomorrow, but guess what you can control and focus on? Your fueling. Am I hitting my goals nutrition-wise? Am I training? Am I getting my 8 to 10K steps? Am I getting my water in? If I can have somebody switch their focus of, yes, set the goal, but then kind of forget it a little bit and really hone in on the process, which is very similar to writing a book, I'd imagine, that outcome is inevitable, but I didn't focus on the outcome to get to the outcome. I focused on the daily process that will lead to that outcome. And we checkpoint between there, right? It's not that we just set it and forget it and then just do the same thing that's not working. We need to have self-awareness of, man, this isn't working, so let me shift 1 degree. Let me take a left turn versus a right turn. But that has been incredibly helpful from a business perspective of, I'm just going to win today. I'm not going to focus about this X goal or this X goal or this Y goal. Yes, I'm going to set it and that's my vision, but I'm going to focus on just winning today. And that's good enough for today. And allowing that pressure to be off of myself of needing to get to that goal tomorrow has actually enabled me to do a lot more than being so focused on that.
Yeah, I think that's why it's easy to quit, because we don't see the instant gratification. Right? We as humans just need, right? I need that chocolate cake right now. Right? I need the, and it's like, well, what if you just had a little crumb? Right? Well, no, that's not going to work because I need to show satisfaction for the work I just created. So I think that's why a lot of some of the most successful people is they can move back to the messy middle. And I didn't see the needle move much at all. I didn't see, I need that gratification. But if you can just, again, head down, data proving I'm building reps every day. But yeah, I think it's just, we're wired like that. We need to see, I need to see this is working. And a lot of times it could go days, weeks, months before you see, back to your fitness example, it's like seeing these big, what if you just focused on nutrition today? Just focused, or if you did that for how many days in a row and stack those days up, gosh, what a difference it would make.
Yeah. You don't go crazy in the process too.
Yeah, right.
So let's talk, this is very fitting for you, about writing a book. Writing a book fascinates me because that's something I have yet to do. All I have is an outline. I haven't actually gone through the process of writing a book. And it's been really cool to chat with you during the process of it. So talk to me about the process. How was it? What did you learn? I'm just going to open-end it because that's very fascinating to me.
So I just finished the first draft in like 2 months ago. And so it was everything we talked about, right? You're not seeing any success, the book's not done. You have to just keep chipping away. And I can get into a deep dive on some of my heroes, authors that will like show you how they did it, right? So I
Yeah.
love John Acuff, I love Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah.
And so, those guys are awesome with their, giving their information, their time, giving their gifts away for the rest of us. And so, but even with that said, like there's no right or wrong way to do it. And of course, those guys are going to make it look easier because I think Acuff's he just released his 11th book.
Oh, casual.
Right? Casual. And so, he'll swing by airports and sign, and he's at a gay, he'll swing by the airport bookstore.
Yeah, me too.
That's like the goat. Like that's like the top of the mountain author guy, right? Like I'm in the airport bookstore, behind the scenes publishing, like that's a huge deal. Yeah. And so it was just a lot of like mind games like anything else. I'm seeing zero progress, but again, in my head, so 1 month I'd focus on word count. The next month I'd focus on time. And I don't, again, and so, but I never went back and read anything. And so it took 14 months. I took a month off like they say you're supposed to do. And I found an editor. And so she and I are in the midst of editing round 1, which I don't know if there's going to be 3 rounds or there's going to be 8, but I've, had the luxury, I've been blessed to be introduced to other authors, some locally, some just, in Zoom calls, and how they do this process. So it's like this beautiful artistic flow to write, meaning it's hard, but it's a different mindset. And then kill your darlings, right? When you start editing, it's like, and she's good and she's tough, but we have a working doc and she'll be editing and I'll creep at my phone and look, she wrote a note and I'll be like,
no.
Yeah, right.
But I wanted it there.
Right. And so it's a huge ego. So I don't know, and me talking about it means I have to do it. Yeah. I didn't have this tool in my bag a year ago. I wasn't telling anybody. Well, what if what if it doesn't work out? What if it's dumb? What if it's, well, again, detaching from the outcome. What do you want here? Right. And are you trying to be this, or are you trying? And so I'm like, well, I have an idea. I want to put it into a book and I think it's going to serve others. Okay. That's a success. Right. And so, but that idea was there for 6 years before I wrote. Right. So I had this idea of what it could be. And for 6 years, I just let fear stand there and go, you're not an author. You're not, this or that. And, I told you before the pod, like, I think it's hopefully done end of this year, first of next year. It could be another 2 years. I don't, because I'm not, and I have to be vulnerable enough and honest enough to say, I've never done this before. Right. And so I can tell you after editing, I sent myself a text the other day. Sometimes I do that when I'm kind of in a hurry, and so I could come back to it. And I completely switched gears. I haven't told my editor yet. I switched gears on a lot of the structure of the book.
Oh,
but
interesting.
But it built clarity because she and I had a couple working sessions and there were some question marks how we were going to do it. And so I think it'll actually benefit me. But again, it was one of those where I'm literally walking through a path in the forest in the dark and I don't know what I'm doing. It's the weirdest, scariest thing that I think I've done. The most rewarding at times. Yeah. The minute I hit period on the last sentence of like I fell off my chair. Like it was cool. It was emotional. But you're going into the abyss now with kill your darlings and this is going to be hard in the edit. And that's what you hear a lot of authors say. There's an awesome, beautiful soul, Anne Lamott. Have you ever heard of her?
No.
Anne Lamott wrote this book called Bird by Bird. Okay. And the premise is she was a little girl and her brother had a science project due, those bird projects we have. And so they were at the house one Sunday and her brother was crying and her dad said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "My bird project's due tomorrow." And her dad said, "Well, we'll get it done. Let's start working." And her brother said, "You don't understand. There's so many birds I have to do. I'm never going to finish it." And her dad said, "We're going to do it bird by bird." And so she wrote a book called Bird by Bird about writing. And it's just like this, right? And it's such a metaphor for life. Like I think we just talked about, right? Like doing these little things in chunks. And so, Anne has this thing, write a really crappy draft as fast as possible. Yeah. So what's that mean? It could be a year, it could be 3 years. Doesn't mean rush through as fast as you can. So, but then the real work becomes when you're editing is what I'm learning. And it's just a whole new mindset. And it's, I could sit here some days and tell you I'm awful at it, but most days it's just fear and again, imposter syndrome. And so that's been the path so far and we'll see where it goes.
That's incredible. What is the book about? And share as much or as little as you feel comfortable.
Sure. So I noticed a pattern and I'm not the first to say it, but I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're afraid to verbalize it, but it's being an entrepreneur and a small business owner and just being a leader. You don't have to own the company, but just maybe holding that C-suite is extremely lonely and isolating. And, and a lot of times I would get in conversations with people, and I should have started just writing it down and recording it over that 6-year period at least. But the conversation would end with or maybe not end, but lead to the person I was talking to say, I just feel like I'm on an island. And I felt that, right, over the years. Because, I see it as there's sort of 4 phases, right? It's like dream, launch, scale, and then you get to the peak of the mountain. What's next? Doesn't mean you exit, you could stay, go, whatever. But there's just these seasons of it. And each season you dip your toe into, it's a new beginning. And it's like the season of loneliness and isolation and, the budding entrepreneur who chooses that path, and maybe they're a little bit younger, and all their friends have these cushy jobs they went to college for, and they're looking over like, man, they got 401ks, they have vacation, they're doing all their stuff, like they're adulting, and here I am trying to figure this out, right? It's just so isolating and lonely, and so but for my brain to put that all on paper was kind of hard.
Yeah.
So it's a parable, it's a fable, it's something that there's characters that like kind of express the human part of the story. They're of course behind the scenes, and so without leading too much more into it.
I'm so excited for it.
I am too. It's just we have some work to do, but yeah.
Oh, man, I could talk to you forever, but I know we need to wrap up. But they're going to kick us out here, and I want to be respectful of your time. But that's interesting that you share that, because you came to the gym last week, and I want to really get into this one. And you're with Ash and I, which Ash is the girl that I trained with. She was on the podcast a few weeks ago. And you said, hey, Kelsey, have you ever done this? Ask this question to Chat GPT. And I was like, what's the question? And I have it written down right here. And this is the prompt that you give Chat GPT. You said, now that you've remembered everything I've ever typed here, point out my top 5 blind spots and provide me wisdom and guidance in how I can adopt habits to successfully overcome. I was like, oh, what's it going to give me? Like, it's just going to spit out some silly things. It hit on my deepest, darkest fears and areas where I'm like, how is this even coming up with this? And and this is a paraphrase of it, but one of the points that it brought up is, number 1, really undervaluing my influence that I have. And it talked more in depth about me not wanting to outshine others to reflect making them feel uncomfortable with themselves, and like not stepping up and stepping into the position that I am in to fully be seen. Because I really do value community, and I value people feeling relatable to me, and not just feeling like that's just Kelsey, and so I can't have it for myself. Like that's everything that I'm about is, no, like you can do it too. But I think almost to the extent where I pull myself back and hold myself back, because if I let myself go and if I keep reaching these levels, then that might mean other people might not think it's available to them. Which is completely the opposite of what goal I'm trying to achieve, because I want to keep reaching new levels to show other people what's possible. And not everybody's going to connect with that. Not everybody's going to understand that. And that's okay. But if I soften myself or dim my light, that's doing nobody a service.
Wow.
And so it went deep. But I want to bring this in with the topic of a book, because I can imagine that as you're writing, I mean, this is your heart, your soul, to be fully seen in what you're writing, for me, would pull up a little bit some fears of, man, how is this going to be perceived and received? Or just to be fully seen with everything that you are writing down. Has that came up for you at all or not yet?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I think you go through, I have zero, I guess, knowledge of, because this is the first one, but I feel like a book is on maybe an author's heart at a certain point in their life that, like, I don't know that I could have went there at a different season in my life, right? So writing basically off of 2024, that was a different season maybe than I'm leading into now, and a lot of that's intentionally, but others, it's just how life evolves. So yeah, it's the most vulnerable place I've ever gone, and it's going to be a whole new, again, we go back to what we talked about earlier, no matter which path you go down and how many times you've conquered a fear, there's always a new one creeping in. and maybe I'm setting myself up for this by talking about it now, but I know when I hit send on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or like I give you a copy, I'm going to be driving home going, oh, she hasn't responded. I wonder if she thinks, right? Because
yeah.
you're detached, you're not detached from the outcome
Yes,
and care,
yes.
you know,
Yeah.
other people's opinions. And so, yeah, I mean, it's, you throw yourself out there as the creator, as one of the most vulnerable places you can, you know, you're wide open, naked with the world, saying, this is what I wrote this. I hope you like it, you know, question mark.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, but again, detaching from the outcome is this is what I did, and this is how I see the world.
And not everybody's going to understand, or there's going to be more people that will hit home with it by you being truly you than you putting out a softened version of what's true to you.
Yeah, I mean, my all-time, you know, one of my all-time great favorite authors is Seth Godin, and he, you know, he always talks about like building your tribes, and people like us do things like this, but he's like, when you put your art or your work out into the world and somebody doesn't like it, that's okay. It's not for them. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean that they are bad for not receiving it, right? Like if I said, back to chocolate cake, it was like, Kels, I brought a chocolate cake. And you're like, Michael, that's disgusting. I hate chocolate. I'm allergic to it. Well, I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, you're so wrong. And your opinion's dumb and you should eat it even if it makes you swell up and you're allergic, right? Like that's, right? Like, no, if somebody doesn't like something you put out, it's okay. Don't take it personal. It's not for them.
Exactly. Man, that's so good.
Yeah.
Is there anything else before I ask you the last question, which I didn't give you? Is there anything else that's on your heart to share, to talk about, or to give?
No, I think just, you know, kind of recapping what we talked about. I think, you know, your listeners are drinking from the same, you know, Kool-Aid that you and I are. And it's one thing we haven't talked about, I guess, would just be hope. And I think hope is such a powerful thing. I know a lot of times it gets lost in like the whimsical, you know, woo-woo world of like, oh, it's not backed by science and data. But I think I would just encourage people to, and I've wrote some things on hope over the years, and I just kind of come back and look at it myself of it's like the one string we have, right? Is like if you can mix like somewhat of a positive attitude with hope. There's that saying, if we have breath, we have options. And so as long as we can continue to lean into life, or, you know, something that's challenging and just a glimpse of hope. And when we don't know what to do, I often tell myself and other people, don't do anything at all, right? Just get quiet with it. Eventually you'll see the path. But I think hope is such a powerful tool. If we can just train our brains to like just lean into a possibility something else could be out there.
How would you define hope?
I think it's just that. I think it's hope is, I think I call it a she. I think she's always there. I think she's always waiting for you to call upon her. I'd call as a power, as a, gosh, it's a blank canvas. You know, I you know, tell my kids sometimes, like, Monday morning, blank canvas, you know, this has never been done before. No, it's Monday. I get, no, it's Tuesday. No, there's hope, right? This is a blank canvas. We get another shot. And to me, that co-aligns with hope, that there's something magical that could happen that day, that there's something hopeful that, you know, we could look into with the situation. If someone just says, well, I'm hopeful this happens, that's good. But like, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that, right? It goes based on, again, unlearning past experiences that no longer serve us, to what could I hope for? What could I build hope in that's positive, that could be out there, that could teach me a lesson. And again, back to creating our expectations, maybe leaning into hope of a path that this is going to work out better than I thought.
Yeah, oh man, I did not know you were going to go there. That's so good. What goes coming up for me was two things. It was just better future, right? Sometimes people can feel stuck. A lot of times the people that are listening, they're not like completely paralyzed and stuck, but there's an area of their life that just feels resistance, but it's better future. And it pulls into somewhere in the Bible. I don't know the verse, but it's like, where there's no vision, the people will perish. And I always equate vision to, there's hope that there's a better future. And there's the book by Viktor Frankl, The Man's Hope for Meaning, or Man's Search for Meaning. And he was in the Nazi camps. And he said he could 100% tell the individuals that would perish because they lost hope. Hope was the number one thing that kept certain people alive, and the others died.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
So, last question with this from the hope aspect. If somebody's out there and it's like, man, I just don't see a better picture, or I don't have hope, or maybe it's not as strong right now, what advice would you give them?
I think we're doing ourselves a disservice not reaching out to community,
That's good.
even if it's just one person.
So
I think we all have that one person.
mm-hmm.
And I know I've been on both sides of the coin
Mm-hmm.
where I need to talk to someone, and it's so hard for me. I'm getting better at it to reach out to a friend, and I'll just sit there and sit in my own suffering and try to figure it out. And, and that's okay sometimes but I heard something the other day. There's a difference between being alone and loneliness, right? If you want to go into the wilderness being alone and clear your head and get clarity versus I'm going into the wilderness with loneliness. And I just don't feel I have hope. So I think, finding, even if it's that one person with in the community aspect, if more than one, that's awesome. And then I've been on the other side where I think it's a really cool gift if, you have a friend that's struggling, they reach out to you. It's like, hey, I'm struggling here, right? And, a lot of times, and I do this, with my kids sometimes too, is let them pour their heart out. And it's like, do you want me just to listen, or would you like feedback? And which side of this? And I just think it opens up, and I've had friends ask me that. I'm like, I think I've got it. I just need to dump this on you. I need to dump it on, verbalize this to someone, right? And vice versa. And sometimes I'm like, I'm completely lost. Yes, I want you to give feedback. So I think anyone that's out there who's going through that, like, just reach out, and the conversation and the ball is going to go down a path you maybe didn't see coming, and it's a beautiful thing to watch it to open up into possibility.
Community. People around you.
Community.
It's so good. Okay, last question. Promise.
All right.
Because we are going to get kicked out pretty soon. What would you say is the definition, or what does seeking the edge mean to you?
Kelsey, this is funny because I'm not a big New Year's resolution guy, but I love a word of the year. And so last year in 24 was action. I almost forgot. So again, writing the book, and it's a little action every day, right? It was throughout the year. I never once doubted that word. It always just felt in my soul the whole year. So coming into this year, I was like, okay, action. Very proud of some of the actionable items I did last year, but I need to take it to the next level. And so this is kind of cool because I was thinking about this yesterday. I want to share with you. I haven't told you yet. And the word for this year is expand.
Oh, let's go.
Right?
Hey, expand your limits.
And I haven't told you this yet. And so right around that time, you had already, rebrand, expand your limits. And so I was like, expand. And I don't think it was more than a day went by. And I was in my car. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Kelsey's new brand, right? Like expand your limits. Yeah. And so I think it kind of is that same, right? Like expand. And in my brain, I see it visually, because I'm more of a visual, as like a canvas, and you're expanding to the edge of it without falling off the painting, right? You're still dancing in the art of the project of life, whatever, but you're dancing to the edge. You're expanding to, seeking the edge, because that's where the magic is, right? Like back to that work you're avoiding. If you can get through that hard work and expand, gosh, the growth. And I think that's where the momentum comes, because I did that hard thing and look how much I grew. Yeah, but you have to do it again. I know.
Yeah, I know.
But I've rewired my brain. Now, guess what? I have data. I have proof. So seeking that edge, because I know that version of me. Like I have this thing I do every night before I go to bed, and it's maybe kind of old school, but I have it in my car right now. But I have my agenda for the day, right? And it's, take my son to school, do this, that. But it's put things, especially like writing or, doing a podcast or something, I put them in hourly, but there's hard things in there. Well, 8 p.m. Michael gets to look at that and, make those decisions. Well, guess who doesn't want to do it the next day, right? 6 a.m. me, really 1 p.m. me doesn't want to do it, right? Because it's mid-afternoon, you hit that crash. But it's like, getting to that, putting it on paper and like looking at it. And then that's how I can expand to the edges, is set the plan, and you gotta follow it. You I can't at least argue with myself. Like, no, I knew exactly what I was doing. Nobody's holding a gun to my head. Like I knew exactly what I was doing, and I said I was going to do this. But you get into the messy middle, and that's when you want to change gears and quit or not do it, or it's procrastinate and go over here. Yeah, I got to get caught up on laundry. Say you're going to do something that's more more important. So I really think it's like just like maintain that focus. Like set the blueprint, expand to the limit even when it's hard.
That's a way better answer than I have. I'm going to have you introduce the podcast every time now. No, that's great. But Michael, I'm incredibly grateful for you, and not just what you do or what you're building, but who you are. And it's funny, the first time that we got coffee and we barely knew each other, you were telling me you were writing a book, and I was like, this is a person that just gets it. Like, he understands it. And when I was first evolving in my journey, I felt really alone because, I have a great family and I had great friends, but I also didn't reach out to those people. But I was also growing into a new version of me. And when you're evolving into a new version, some of the old has to die. And that was really hard for me. And I've always heard the phrase of, like, you'll attract the people that you're meant to attract. And I was like, all right, yeah, but it feels really isolating right now. And you're one of those people that it's like, this version of me is incredibly grateful that you're in my life and that I've been able to lean on you in moments, but also be inspired by you and all that you're doing. So I appreciate you and who you are and what you're doing. Well,
thank you. And I know that everybody listening is listening because of that exact, right back at you type mentality, because, Kelsey, you're a light. You're one of the most inspirational people I've ever met.
We're crazy.
I've got some years on you. Well, you got to have a little crazy in there. So thank you for those kind words, and keep leading and keep inspiring on everything you're doing, because we're not to make you feel a little nervous about this. We're all counting on you because
not to put pressure, but
because it's working for us what you're doing. So you're taking that gift and spreading it out as we talked about. So thank you.
We're overcoming those blind spots.
That's right.
I'll tell you that.
That's right.
If people wanted to stay updated on your book and social and podcasts, where would you send them? And we can also put this in show notes.
Yeah, so my personal Instagram has the podcast in there as well. So I believe it's Flinner.
Yep.
And then Dare to Daydream Pod. Dare to Daydream. I don't even know exactly what it's called.
Yeah, it is. I've creeped on it.
Okay,
So it's
But they're both on there, so I know you'll put it in there. But those kind of run parallel with each other. But yeah, that's probably the best way.
Let's go. We'll put it in there.
Awesome.
All right, crew. I know that y'all got value from this. We talked all the things: doubt, fear, hesitation, action, emotions. Like, if we think about this conversation, it went everywhere in the best way possible. And I always pray before every single podcast with each guest if they feel comfortable with it. And I think he took it in the direction that it was meant to be. So for those that are out there, if something hit home with you, if there's one thing that's like, oh, that's what I'm putting into action, once again, it can be really good to hear these things, but to apply it to your life and then put it into action, that's where the work and that's where the magic is. So reach out to Michael specifically. I know when you're doing this stuff that you're not getting that validation quick, it can be such an inspiration when you receive that message of this hit home. So message him. And as always, continue to expand and seek the edge of your comfort zone and show yourself what you're capable of. Love y'all.